My name is Jennifer Taylor, and I am here to talk at STAR about family systems and the impact of having what I would call a neurotypical sibling. Some call it disabled, so there will be the word disabled in here. But I want to thank STAR for having me back. It's great to be here. I was here twice last year. So it's really a pleasure, and I always feel grateful to be invited back. We did this last year, and it was after all of the power outages, I think, and we weren't able to fully do it. So we're here again to do it tonight. And I am going to start with a little bit of a personal story. I don't always do that. But I have a son who is 19 and was on the spectrum. Well, I guess he still is. And I have a younger son as well. And so when it comes to this presentation, I can tell you that everything in here is personal to me and is personal to my practice. My son John won't mind me telling you his name because he has outed himself all the time about the fact that he needed residential treatment after a while of stumbling through, and STAR was not the best fit for him going into high school, so he did kind of develop some challenges, and he needed a residential therapy to get back on track, and thankfully he has done great through high school and is now in a transition to college, let's figure this out program. But through that whole process, I really had to take a deeper dive into family systems, and that's how I started my therapeutic ed consulting practice, which about 70% is out of home residential placements. But so this is near and dear to me, and just so you know, when I'm talking about it, it's really come from a personal space. And I want to make this interactive, so I have not that many slides. I don't want to do all the talking, but I'm not going to call on you, especially because we're on video, so if you want to remain anonymous, that's okay. But I do encourage you to ask me questions. Just want to touch base. Okay, so let's see if I've got the right way to click. So I want to just start off with some support for you as parents. If you're here, you probably have a student who is a child in your home that's not been the easiest to parent, and not many people except those of us here or who have kids who are neurotypical will know what that feels like. And I'm not sure we always get thanked enough, or we think about ourselves as much as how hard we're working. So I just want you to start off by saying, you know what, you're working hard. This is hard parenting. This is my parenting is not for sissies moment, right? I'm not always good at thinking that we should, or I shouldn't say good, but I don't always believe that it's good to compare, the burdens we carry versus others. Everybody's got their story, with the exception of raising a child with special needs, whether it's mental health or a physical disability or a combination thereof or a learning difference or whatever. You're doing harder work. It just is. It just is harder. Many families do have kids that come out pretty self-regulated. Doesn't mean they don't need parenting, but there's a smoother path, and we know those families, and we are blessed to have those families in our lives and feel good for them, but that doesn't mean we can't take a hard look and say, you know what, this is hard, and I'm doing a good job. I'm going to take care of myself, and we'll talk about that at the end. Oh. Are you going to bounce again? Okay. This is an analogy I use in my practice a lot, and I want to make it as a preamble to some of the things we're going to talk about. So here's a car that's hitting a tree. It's pretty obvious. And at the bottom it says, the most vulnerable may be the driver, but. So this analogy I use in my practice in that we're a family system, so we're all in the car, right? This could be any small microsystem. We're all in the car, and it's our child who crashed into the tree. But everybody else is in the car. So whatever other kids you might have, grandparents, partner, maybe it's just you, but there's ricochet and everybody's a little injured. So, it's an analogy, it's a metaphor, but I hope it drives home the fact that at this point, we are working really hard to help our child feel better and do better, but we're also having to deal with everybody else in our family, which could be our husband or wife, that relationship, other kids that we have in our family, friends, grandparents. Nobody really knows what it's like to be in the car. So this is an analogy I use a lot because I really do think it demonstrates that, and the crash may be a bit of an oversell, but I think you get the point. We're all feeling the effects of what it's like to have a child who has some special needs. Okay. You're going to edit this out, right, Lisa? It's fine. No one's perfect. I wouldn't want to be perfect. I just want to be me. Well, I got it to go. Okay, there we go. So I want to talk about trauma. It's a word I think now is sometimes overused. Where can I stand so you all can see? Probably be easier over here. So trauma can be a big T or a tiny t. And the big T trauma would be like you witnessed 9/11. Like that would pretty much be a huge one. A middle one might be you're in a car accident, still kind of freaky. And then a small one might be, I don't know, you had a piece of toilet paper on your shoe and you're walking around and you're embarrassed. It's like the tiniest little experience you could have. So in between there are our life experiences, and everybody has a feeling of helplessness in their own way and what it feels like to them. But this is what a definition of trauma is something that happens against your will that you cannot control, and it's an exposure to distress. So think about the sibling in your home who has the ability to share their family life with a brother or sister who have special needs. So that is a bit of a trauma for them, and it's what I would consider kind of a multiple little t traumas along the way, because it's not one big one all at one time, or maybe it has been, maybe there's been some kind of explosive stuff happening, but it's the tiny things that happen. And so just to understand that there is a tiny bit of what your child, your sibling is experiencing is a tiny bit of trauma. They can't control it, and that helplessness is part of what's underneath them. And I think understanding what that is helps going forward in terms of creating, it's not going to be this dire the whole time, I promise. Car crashes and trauma, we've started out. But this is what it's creating stress for the sibling. Children can personalize discrepancies, as we know that's a common theme in divorces. It was my fault. So siblings can kind of sometimes personalize what that, we've got some crazy people outside. Wow.
We've had turkeys lately. Are they turkeys?
It's not like turkey. It's birds.
Well, maybe it's springtime and everybody's calling for a date. That's okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And so our siblings can often personalize it a little bit more than we might understand. And then, of course, as parents, we are caught in the middle of trying to manage everything, which, again, is a hard experience. So just a little touch on what trauma is. So what is the well sibling syndrome? So this is a not very well researched syndrome, as you will. It's not in the DSM-5. It's not something that is talked about, with a lot of frequency, but it is a thing. It really says that, the mental health or disability of one sibling can affect the other, and we call that other the well sibling. There was a study done by the American Psychological Association in 2008. It was a 46-year study, so a nice longitudinal study of people who have a sibling with mental illness are more likely to experience depression. That's probably not too much of a leap in terms of reasonableness. Whether that's still true, I don't know, but it's probably true. And I would say anxiety fits in that category too. Anxiety and depression, kind of hard to tease out. And then the younger at the time of stress, the increase of the impact. So if that diagnosis, if that experience in your family started sooner rather than later, that's just, as I was saying, like kind of the cumulative effect. In general, the feelings of being overlooked, pretending to be sufficient when maybe you're not, feeling like you need less and that means you get less, living on the periphery and then creating some loneliness. So those are some of the things that they were studying in that well sibling syndrome and those characteristics of what it might feel like. They can sense our parental feelings of grief and loss. Our kids are very sensitive. So when we're maybe feeling anxious, not only everybody in the family can feel anxious, especially if it's a parent and it's the caregiver. So there's also that experience that the neurotypical, I'll say, sibling can feel. And they may overcompensate. I will tell you, I think in my family, I think my younger son tried to overcompensate a little bit and kind of smooth things over and be more of my buddy. If those of you have kids on the spectrum, that social reciprocity piece can be hard as a parent because you just are giving so much and you don't always get that back, that warmth consistently. So I know my younger son really tried to create that bond, and I wouldn't say he overcompensated, but I know for sure that he put more effort into that. So expectation of having to care for the siblings. How many of you feel like maybe your other child feels like, oh, maybe it's my job to take care of this? No, none? Oh, that's good. I have a story there. It will get better, I think. I don't think my son necessarily feels that, but we've really been stressing that. Doesn't take away the fact that it's his brother. And that's laudable. I think, we all feel a family connection. It's definitely improved as my kids have gotten older. But there are some, and you will see a video, and in different respects, in terms of that well sibling syndrome, it was a very, broad group of kiddos. Shame, anger, embarrassment. I don't know how many of you experienced that your sibling kind of feels like they don't want other kids to see their brother or sister. That can happen, whether it's overt or not. You could feel like, especially in the middle school years, if your kids are in the same school, or even if they're in a different school, you're at the playground or a party, could be a little bit, anxiety producing to have a brother or sister that doesn't fit in. Can be kind of that provoke of embarrassment. And then feeling that internal conflict, like I should love them, but I don't, but I'm not sure, but I feel funny, but they're not like other kids and I'm trying to fit in. So there's all that can be brewing. And then some kids have somatic complaints, which means a headache, stomach ache, and those are all signs of anxiety. And some, even some behavioral challenges. Okay, so this is a sweet video, but before I show it, I will tell you another personal story. So when my son needed to have some more intense mental health work, it wasn't about his autism, it was about his anxiety and depression and isolation and school refusal. My younger son, so he goes off, he's a freshman in high school, my younger son is 7th grade. And imagine you've lived in a home where you've had a brother on the spectrum who's a little bit quirky, but also a little bit challenging behaviorally, and there's all this effort going into him a lot of the time. And despite the fact that I really took time to have one-on-one time with my other son and do special things with him, and maybe you all do the same thing, try to create that special time. I'll never forget the day that I had dropped my son off, and I think I'd been home about a week, and I'm already feeling like my right arm is gone, and it's a little strange, and especially when you put so much effort into something, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, I don't have to do that. And I remember looking at my other son, with whom I just said we had a pretty close relationship, and there was no nurturing mom that day. I looked at him, and he was on the couch. I can totally remember, and I said, oh, gosh, don't you miss him? And he looked right at me and he goes, no. And right then it was like, and I just, as a parent, I felt like I haven't done my job, they don't love each other, and well. But right then was a very clear, no, suck the life out of the house. Now mine's more extreme because we had to kind of make an intervention that was bigger. But I wonder if there's a similar feeling of, not so much. There's a lot going on here, and it's quieter, it's calmer. There's a little bit more attention on what's feeling with me, which actually is making me feel better. So I'm going to show you this video because these girls are super sweet, and they probably would never say what my son said to me. But that is reality, is, kids are going to swing. I'm sure this was made for a specific purpose. But I want to tell you, as my boys have grown older and we've made strides with my older son, they've formed a very close bond. And what is very heartening to see is that as they matured, and both of them have, is that they definitely have a relationship that I don't think we would have had if we hadn't worked as hard as you all are doing with, teaching skills and emotional regulation and learning OT and speech therapy and all the things that the kids will need to really be able to form those closer bonds and be part of a peer group. Okay, so let's watch this adorable video. So a couple of things after that video. Super touching. I think it touched on some of the themes that I talked about at the beginning. One is a quick, I have some in the resources section about the SIB shops that are available in the Bay Area. There aren't that many. If you or Star want to start a SIB shop, you just call that. There's a website and you can start one. I checked yesterday just to double check. The only one that is around here is in the city. And I think there is one social pragmatic group in the Bay Area, in Corte Madera, that does one too. With respect to the feelings thing, I'm not sure we're always taught that emotional vocabulary within our families and how to talk to each other about feelings. This is a total kind of sidebar because I did give another talk about here at STAR about how to talk to your child and their siblings about their differences. But I think it's really important to not hide your frustration or your sadness or your fear or your anxiety, because your kids feel it anyway. And if we teach our kids how to name their feelings, they won't bottle them up as much. I think what happens is, and it's no fault of ours, many of us probably didn't grow up in homes where our parents really sat us down and told us about their internal workings. I think especially in this situation, it's really important to check in with your child and just, how you feeling? Oh, I don't know. There, I'm sure you can find it on the internet. There is, and Brene Brown also has, who's one of my heroes, has a list of what feelings are. I'm sure you can go on. And in speech therapy and some of the occupational therapists, they will have lists of feelings, instead of just like good, bad, fine. There's frustrated. I feel isolated. I feel angry. I feel smothered, or whatever. There's so many ways to describe how we're feeling. And sometimes it's nice just to have a sheet and point out, like, is there a word on here that describes how you're feeling? I'll point out mine to you. I just really think that not talking about how you're feeling and asking your child about how they're feeling is just creating an opportunity for further anxiety and the possibility that your other child doesn't feel heard. And I also think that it's important as our kids grow up to develop some empathy towards the fact that I'm a person and I also feel certain things, and at age-appropriate levels. But I don't think it's too soon to start talking to your kids in an emotionally intense way about what's going on and how you feel about things. So with that, let's go to nurturing that parent-child relationship. So we did see in the video talking about a little frequently is better than a big chunk. So maybe that's 5 minutes a day if possible of what I might call couch time, where you just sit and how was your day? If you have a boy, fine. Did you do anything? No. Did you have fun at school? Fine. That's okay. Have 5 minutes of silence. Have 5 minutes of, well, let me tell you about my day. Eventually it'll kick in. If you have a girl, you won't need to talk. You'll have those 5 minutes filled in 5 minutes. At least if I can show my gender bias, that's been my experience with young girls and young boys. I have a little problem with that because I do a lot of work on shame, because I think as parents, especially when we have kids that may not be fitting right into that, perfect mold, we carry some shame with that. So when she said, I shouldn't feel that way, or I learned that, that I felt guilty about that, I wanted to say, you felt the way you felt. The way you feel is totally fine. Learning more empathy after that experience is great. But when she kind of was getting down on herself for having that feeling, that's one part of the video where I just feel like, you're a teenage girl, you've got a sibling in your house that's not so easy to take care of, and your mom was gone a lot. So I kind of felt sadness for her as well, but it was nice that she could turn it into, that her experience at the Sib shops gave her a voice to talk about it, and then give her an experience that could kind of make it a way for her to look at it differently. It's overwhelming. Yeah, it's overwhelming. And I think importantly, owning that feeling, like I said at the beginning, is what we need to do as parents, is kind of go, yeah, kind of sucks some days. I'm pretty tired. Where can I refill my bucket? And we'll talk about that as well. Anybody else have comments or want to share? Okay. So nurturing that parent-child relationship, creating a safe space so that they can talk about their feelings. As I said, they personalize the discrepancy, so allowing them to kind of vent a little bit and just acknowledge. I don't know if you've ever heard of reflective listening. It's a way of relating to somebody without getting defensive. It works in a lot of situations, but especially in a very emotionally intense situation, or where someone's saying, well, I don't really like it, and you're never here, or why do we have to go to that party, and why can't I stay home by myself, and et cetera. Just reflecting on, sounds like you're really having a hard time with this. That makes sense to me. Just validate, create the safe space, let your children, all of them, and your spouses and friends and bosses and neighbors, you can just validate how it must be feeling and just really connect on that level. One-on-one time, we talked about that. She talked about that in the video. I think it's critical to be able to connect in a one-on-one way if you can. Practicing attunement, that's the reflective listening. Hear and understand, honor the feelings. I don't think there should be shame in any way about how we feel, how we express ourselves. I try to bring a judgment-free zone into my own life and just accept. And that is a feeling, and there's really, a feeling just comes over. You can't really have much control over it. We know that they're not going to last forever, but we can express them and learn how to get support when we have them. So just practicing attunement. I had a video on attunement that I've shown before, and I didn't bring it with me, but maybe if we have time at the end, I can Google it. We'll go off video and I'll show it to you. Sorry, video fans. So give education and information. Knowledge is power. Again, I loved in there, and I think it's important to kind of sit down and say, do you understand why, in my case, why does John act this way? What is autism? What is it about the way he hears words? What makes him want to buy 100 Rubik's Cubes? Why isn't he so fun to hang out with? And expressing it as your child has, in that age-appropriate way. I think there are different times to talk about that. But again, your whole family is understanding that there's something that's a little different in their household, and kind of talking about it and how you're handling it as a family is important. Fair and reasonable expectations of all children. There are no free passes just because your life is hard. No. Everybody's got something. Set the reasonable boundaries for all your kids. They may be different. I may have a different expectation of what one of my children can do versus the other because they're different. Fairness is important, but I think more than fairness is explaining the expectation, getting an understanding of what that is, and then meeting that expectation. Did you have a question? Okay. So for an example, I might expect one of my children to be able to get up, brush his teeth, get dressed, pack his backpack, and be ready for school in a certain amount of time with only 2 prompts. And if he doesn't, I might say, you know what, next time I really need you to move faster, whatever, and he gets it. My other son may need 5 prompts just to do the teeth part and a picture. And if he takes more than 5, well, that's his expectation is 5, yours is 2. That's not fair. Well, it is fair because this is what his brain can do and this is what your brain can do. So that's a silly example, but that expectation thing, it's gray, but kind of try to find the mid-range for that. And then again, we talked about that. Be honest and open about what it's like to be you. As you said, it's overwhelming, all the balancing and the family dynamics and work and community and church and, God forbid you get a massage or go exercise, right? You're like trying to fit that in. And I think that, again, shielding our kids from their experience is not allowing them to understand the dynamic of your family and what it's going to be like for them. And one of the bonuses, the bonus page is coming up. You'll start to feel better as we move forward. So the positives, here they are. The siblings are usually much more resilient. They have not coasted. Again, every family and every situation has its own dynamics. Generally, siblings are more resilient and can handle harder situations with more grit and more positivity, better coping skills, again. Usually, if can get through, they have higher self-esteem. Helping them overcome it, understand, do well, manage well, talk about your feelings, that self-esteem can actually grow. It doesn't have to be poor me all the time. I mean, those girls, you could tell, like, there was a certain amount of, I love her, I'm proud of her. She's kind of tough, but, you could see some pride growing in those girls. Relational strengths, absolutely. Again, if you can kind of take some of these tips and weave them into your family, all of your family and the siblings will relate to the world in a much more empathetic way. Compassion, patience, tolerance, love, that kind of speaks for itself. I think those are 4 things that if we could weave into a lot of our world, that would help, especially when you've got something that's rough in your house. And advocacy. Embarrassment aside, our siblings generally become pretty good advocates for what it's like to not fit in and to defend their sibling and to take on causes that maybe they see things in the world that not everybody sees that can be helped. And so I think it's a real positive that most of the siblings come out of this as being pretty tough advocates for not only their family, but for others. And then obviously what I put down there is, all of this is dependent on your choices, the inclusion, and what it feels like in your family. And I did something bad. Okay. Sibling support. So let them have their own life, right? That may seem, please. Obvious, thank you. You're going to cut that out, right, Lisa? She's having a mental breakdown. That may be obvious, thank you. Take that out too. So, obvious, but not always so easy, right? Going to gymnastics or playing in a soccer team or having an art class might be really hard to do when you've got to tag along somebody else. You can't leave them at home, you can't get a babysitter, but it's worth it. And I think letting them do their own thing is really important. I think therapy is a really important way to support you and your kiddos, a safe space to talk. So they talked about the sib shops. I would consider that therapy. It doesn't have to be the traditional, let's go sit and talk. Just a therapeutic space to express yourself. I will say for the young people, that's dependent upon their ability to kind of internalize and understand. I think for parents it's essential, whether you do it every week, once a month, having a space that's not your family, not your friends, somebody who can understand how you're feeling and help you process is super helpful. And then be with others, coming to speaking events like this, being in the STAR community is also a way to just completely fill up that bucket and nourish yourself.
We have no star parents here.
What, sweetie?
No star parents. Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, well, you all came to STAR though, so you've got your support group right here. The speaker list is out there too. Thank you. You must be able to talk about it. You know, again, I'm really, in my practice, really try to destigmatize residential treatment. But on top of that, I try to destigmatize any person who has, you know, a neurotypical development, whatever that is. They're a human person. Our society seems to be, you know, very caught up in, you know, achievement, and especially in Marin, you know, how you do, how you perform, what your family's all about. I think if you feel strong enough to talk about it, I think we all need to kind of talk about how families can look different. And I think at least within your tribe, whatever tribe you're in, you need to be able to kind of share your feelings. My card's out there, feel free to call me, vent, send me an email, we can chat, happy to do it. How about grandparents? How about extended family? How are you going to do some self-care and get yourself some space away from it? It's, again, something many people in the self-care world will say, you know, just take a break. You can take a break in 2 minutes, and we'll do it right now. It's a very easy 3-step process where if you can find, you know, a quiet space for 2 or 3 minutes in your home or in your car maybe, and just, there's like it's a 3-step meditation. It's very easy. You don't have to like breathe heavy or feel the pressure of, oh, I'm supposed to take care of myself. What does that mean? You can just sit where you are and you know, maybe right now, you know, practice it and just notice your body. How does it feel in the chair? Where are your feet? Are your shoulders tense? You know, what do your thighs feel like? What does your head feel like? What does your chin feel like? And just notice your body. Just spend 30 seconds just kind of like, okay, kind of hungry. Maybe a little sweaty. Otherwise, I'm feeling solid in the ground. So you do that, just check in, just check in. Just that 1 minute of checking in can bring you a little bit of calm. And then you can think about what's my environment like? Does it smell funny? Is it light? Is it dark? Is it quiet? Is it loud? So check in with your body, check in with your environment, and then check in with your thoughts. And then, so after your environment, you go like, what am I thinking? Well, so I did this with my parent support group last night, and one of the moms said, well, I'm thinking about the conference that I'm going to tomorrow, and you know, I'm excited about it. And somebody else said, well, you know, I'm thinking about how proud I am of my son for what they did this week. So just check in with what's going on in your mind, and it could be, just like I said, well, I'm looking forward to dinner. I'm thinking about my drive home. I'm thinking about the next slide. So just those 3 steps, check in with your body, check in with your environment, check in with your thoughts. You can do it in 2 minutes. Find a quiet space, and you will just center yourself. It really has just, and it's, again, it's feeling less stress about mindfulness and what it has to look like, and deep breathing and yoga and, you know, a half-hour meditation. It doesn't. But I do think that taking time for yourself and asking for grandparents and taking a time out. Here's that Sibling Support project. Siblingsupport.org. I got on the website again yesterday to make sure it's still there. It is. It's based out of Washington State. Why we don't have more is probably because it's probably a parent-driven process, and maybe there's an opportunity here in the Bay Area north of San Francisco to put something together. And then there's the Sibling Leadership Network, which I did not double check last night, but that was a resource that I had last year, and I'd be surprised if it wasn't still working. So the last thing I would want you to do is walk out of here feeling like there's more stress, there's more to-dos. This is more of an opportunity for me just to share with you what I find is important in my own life and with my practice, the things that really start to pay off in the long run. So, you know, pick one. And then finally, the self-care talk. Again, we just did like a 2-minute self-care. It doesn't have to be a humongous expense or time out of their week. But the analogy I will give you is the bucket. So when your bucket's empty, nobody else in your family can get what you want to give them. And so while we pride ourselves of being busy and getting it all done and managing a lot of things, I think at some point we start to realize that, you know what, I'm getting depleted here, I got so much done, I've got so much more to do, and taking that 5-minute break can actually make you more productive, or taking that hour walk, or calling a friend, watching a video on YouTube that's funny. I was just at the Raphael. Did you know there was a movie about cats, like videos of cats or funny cats that had been at the Raphael Theater like 3 weeks ago? I'm not I don't have cats, but cat videos are funny. So just laugh. Give yourself a reason to kind of like just break out of whatever's in your head. 5 minutes of a cat video on YouTube would probably do it. I don't know. Maybe you'd have a different kind of thing to look for. I don't know. Maybe it's dogs or squirrels or clowns. Again, do your own therapy. You do have your tiny little traumas happening too. The grief and loss of having a family that maybe wasn't exactly what you anticipated. I will admit there are still days where I kind of feel like, really? We're right here still? You're 19? Right? And again, no shame in feeling that. Like, that's how I feel. Sometimes I just feel like, wow, what is it like to have a kid in college, who went to the prom their whole life, and I don't care what college they went to, but they don't need somebody to remind them still to brush their teeth. Again, poor me, maybe, but it's how I feel. I'm gonna own it. I do have a great therapist, so that helps. Again, this don't be a hero. Again, reaching out. Just, find 1 or 2 people who you know are gonna always answer the phone or give you a text back, even if it's just an emoji, right? Something that says, okay, you heard me, I'm heard, that's what I needed. And again, I just give you some ideas here. Book club, movie club, walking buddies. I do think getting outside your family system is super important. So, don't keep it within your family, don't keep it a grandparent. And then the research on exercise is obviously not overstated. Just, even 2 or 3, walks a week or something really will bring that nervous system down. And when your nervous system comes down, your family's nervous system comes down. The comment in the video about how our kids absorb and feel our feelings is absolutely true. And anything you can do to help you self-regulate is going to pay off tenfold in your family. And I just think exercise is usually available to everybody. So when I've done other parent support groups, I have a parent support group for my practice. That's a Zoom video once a month. And we often talk about self-care at the end especially, and kind of throw out ideas on what did you do this week, what did you do this month, to kind of get yourself grounded. And so this was a list. Somebody said meditate. Funny book, funny movie, humor absolutely builds up the chemical in your brain of the funny chemical, takes your blood pressure down, and you can't laugh and be sad at the same time. You can't laugh and be bored at the same time. You can't laugh and, feel anger at the same time. You can't. Your body just can't do it. When it's laughing, it's laughing. So laughing is one of the things is one of my go-tos. A walk with friends. Kickboxing, not a bad way if you got to get something out of you. One of my family said more supportive groups. Somebody said marriage counseling was really helpful for them. They really needed that kind of partnership support. Massage, always a good idea, and music. Finding a piece of music that you like. Lately, I have been replaying in my mind a silly scene from when my son was little, and I was making him laugh by doing this, right? And that gets me out of a lot of my feelings at some point. Just a silly little time where we actually did connect in a way that made me feel seen by my son. And so maybe there's a moment in time that you can go back to and connect with that. And when you're feeling super stressed out or there's something that's not going well, just go back to that moment when you had, that beautiful time where you actually could connect with them and make that part of your mindset. Anybody else have ideas here? Last time I did this presentation, somebody said red wine and chocolate. But what else would you guys do to do self-care?
For me, it's just time alone.
Time alone.
And it often has to happen outside the house, otherwise there's going to be like
Yep.
I feel like I should be doing. But
Absolutely.
just trying to focus on being. Let more being, less doing.
Yep. More being, less doing. I love it. Again, we do. Come on, this side of the room.
Be outdoors.
The outdoors. Is there a hike that you do, or what does that look like? Mowing the lawn? Just being outdoors. Yep. Also lots of studies on the healing effects of being out in nature. I started hugging trees recently.
Literally hugging tree.
Yes. You can keep that in. Hug a tree. Hug a tree and see what it feels like. It's pretty cool. You can feel the energy of a tree if you really want to. So I challenge you all to go hug a tree. Anybody else? Nature? Birding. Oh.
Wild turkeys. I know where they're at too.
That's lovely because it's concentration, kind of like laughing, where you have to really be focused and listening on something that's outside of everything else. That's beautiful. Thank you. It's beautiful. I think I'm coming to the end. Oh, well, here we go. You have a community, again, school, local agencies, the Department of Rehabilitation, Regional Center, Matrix, which is a Marin County advocacy and support group, Marin Autism Community in Chad, which used to have, I think, it used to have a Marin family group that met in Tiburon. I don't know if they do anymore. Mental health professionals, tutors, avail yourself of the professionals out there. There are a lot of therapeutic tutors in Marin. They are really good. It's not just, math. It's really working with the behavior and the feelings around doing academic work. Coaches, extended family, and even somebody like me. And I would say that while I do a little bit of learning differences day schools in the Bay Area, having been a parent in Marin and having availed myself of services already, and then also I just am pretty well networked with lots of different resources. So my cards are out there. If you do have anything that you have a quick question about, or can you point me in this direction, I'll do my best to try to get you to the right resource, or at least ask somebody else. So please don't be shy about that. It really does take a village to help all of us get through this. And then I love this quote, do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. And there is a place for everybody in the world, and we will find a space for our kiddos who are rocket stars and those who maybe have more challenges, but they're going to be fine. And one of the things I do tell myself pretty often is, it's all okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay for today. Today's okay, so that's good. And I do love this quote because I believe it with all my heart about that. So with that, I say thank you. And unless you guys have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear more about your experiences.